Hi, everyone.
Greetings. We're still in chapter 4 of the Proclaimer's book, The Great Apostasy Develops. Page 37, the subhead is Pagan Teachings Infiltrate. Christ's pure teachings are a matter of record. They are preserved in the Holy Scriptures. For example, Jesus clearly taught that Jehovah is the, quote, only true God, unquote, and that the human soul is mortal. Here they cite John 17, verse 3, and Matthew 10, verse 28. Yet with the death of the apostles and the weakening of the organizational structure, such clear teachings were corrupted as pagan doctrines infiltrated Christianity. How could such a thing happen? A key factor was the subtle influence of Greek philosophy. Explains the new Encyclopedia Britannica, quote, from the middle of the 2nd century AD, Christians who had some training in Greek philosophy began to feel the need to express their faith in its terms, both for their own intellectual satisfaction and in order to convert educated pagans, end of quote. Once philosophically minded persons became Christians, it did not take long for Greek philosophy and Christianity, and they have the word Christianity here in quotation marks, to become inseparably linked.
As a result of this union, pagan doctrines such as the Trinity and the immortality of the soul seeped into tainted Christianity. These teachings, however, go back much further than the Greek philosophers. The Greeks actually acquired them from older cultures, for there is evidence of such teachings in ancient Egypt and Babylonian religions. As pagan doctrines continued to infiltrate Christianity, other scriptural teachings were also distorted and abandoned.
Well, first of all, we've done a lot of work in this area in our other videos, so we won't belabor a lot of these points or refute them here. There's a lot to refute, though.
But we'll link some of them. So.
And we'll put some links on to start with at the end, and a playlist, one playlist, and I think we'll get to more next time. But they start with the assertion, and let me read that again. Christ's pure teachings are a matter of record. They are preserved in the Holy Scriptures. For example, Jesus clearly taught that Jehovah is the only true God and that the human soul is mortal.
Yeah, and what they do is they put the quotes around what is in the text, John 17:3, the only true God, but they tack the name Jehovah ahead of it so that the impression is given that he actually used the name and said it in context of this scripture where he didn't, and nowhere else does he. He usually, when he's talking about God, he identifies him as Father.
Yeah. So we've dealt with that extensively, so we'll put the first of a series of videos we did on that very passage, the Lord's last night with his apostles, John 14 through 17. We've done a lot of work on that already, so that link will be in at the end. But even the expression, the loaded expression, clearly taught. Go to any Matthew commentary about this reference to fear not him who can kill the body but has nothing he can do, and fear rather him who after putting to death has the power to kill the soul as well as the body. That reference here. Just look up any commentary on Matthew and you will see that there's a great amount of dispute about that. Christians aren't dogmatically uniform on their interpretation of it, but they don't believe it clearly teaches anything other than perhaps the obvious point here would be that the word soul itself was disputed among the Jews at that time.
Yes.
So it's not coming in from Greek philosophy. It's argued about among Jews.
Yeah. And when you think of his audience, the Jewish believers at the time did believe in some kind of existence after death.
Certainly the Pharisees did. Yeah. The Sadducees denied it.
So you're talking about God's original organization already talking about this.
So
and I think the big difference is probably linked to the idea that existence equals life. And that's just not true. Yeah. Life is communion with God. Existence is just
survival.
Yeah, survival. But they're not the same thing. And if you equate them as the same thing,
If you think in your
Yeah.
head that they are the same thing, you're in trouble already.
Yeah.
So we've done lots of videos on that too, about Genesis chapter 2 and the soul that is sinning shall die, and all those kind of passages. We won't belabor that here, except to say that the Jews were divided over this themselves. It's got nothing to do with the infiltration of Greek philosophy. The Pharisees believed it because the Old Testament itself, even the Torah, clearly taught that Jacob and the other patriarchs, and King David too, expected that you would survive death in some form. But whatever that was, it was a suppressed existence akin to sleep. But it's not annihilation.
Right.
We'll have a playlist linked at the end on this very subject. But as to this dating of the middle of the 2nd century, that is significant, right?
Yeah, because
The infiltration of Greek philosophy at that time.
yeah, because we do have documents from before that, the early church fathers. So what did they teach? We can find those. They're accessible. We can look at them. And did they speak like Jehovah's Witnesses or teach what Jehovah's Witnesses teach?
Did they, for instance, use the Tetragrammaton? Was the doctrine of God to them the important thing, or was Jesus Christ the important thing?
Well, yeah. They write like when you read the New Testament, you see the prominence of Jesus. And when you read the early church fathers, you see that same thing.
And they call him, as the Gospel of John does, God, not a God. The early church fathers are pretty unanimous, not clear as we would like them to be all the time, but then again, the New Testament, you could easily misunderstand the New Testament because they're still growing in their understanding of who Christ is. It's very clear by the Gospel of John, but you don't know that if your Gospel of John, as in the New World Translation, has been distorted.
The point they're making is that it's starting in the middle of the 2nd century.
Yeah.
But they're not ignoring the early church fathers' writings.
Yes, they are. And who are those transitional fathers leading up to the middle of the 2nd century?
Clement and Ignatius and Polycarp.
Justin Martyr. All of them were already alive before this time when Greek philosophy supposedly influenced Christianity fatally. Notice, again, I said before that Christianity has got quote marks around it, as if everything that came after that is bogus.
Yeah.
Or false, or apostate Christianity. No, that's a simplistic way of viewing church history that we no longer share. And in the 3rd paragraph, this assertion that these teachings, i.e. the Trinity and the immortality of the soul, go back much farther than the Greek philosophers. Well, that is true, but it's only a partial truth. The Greeks actually acquired them from older cultures, for there's evidence of such teachings in ancient Egyptian and Babylonian religions. Well, there's some truth in that. All of the teachings that we now have around us today go back to paganism. But paganism was diverse. That's the point that's missing here. Paganism was what you would think it would be. That is expected to be. If you believe that all religion comes from the original rebellion at Babel, then what does Babel mean? It means confusion. So I set about the quest in my first decade as a witness. Before I was an elder, I was collecting books. That was the beginning of our obsession with books, and finally getting into the book business, trying to prove to myself that the Watchtower was telling me the truth about older cultures, specifically here, Egyptian, Babylonian religion.
Yeah, you wanted to do a good job when you were speaking to non-believers to introduce them to the witnesses.
Yeah, I didn't
and show them this was true.
I didn't think that I could show them our principal source, Babylon the Great Has Fallen, where we get these ideas, most of us from, the book that had come out in the 1960s.
You wanted more sources?
I wanted more sources that they would believe in, so I went hunting for them. And unsuccessfully, I have to say. Because I had to realize during that same decade when I read the Two Babylons twice, I had to realize that book was not credible. It was not a credible source. It was a source that was now only published by the brethren who had a similar axe to grind against Christianity, traditional Christianity, as do the cults. That somehow the church got off the rails and they've restored the true doctrine. So I finally realized that after collecting dozens of books that no, this was not a credible source. First of all, it was too old. It predated modern archaeology and anthropology and comparative religion. the sources that I could find that were more credible and believed in by everybody else out there did not give this picture of a descent of doctrines like the immortality of the soul and the Trinity clear from Babylon and Egypt to today in the church. No, they didn't. There was diversity and a great deal of confusion, which is pretty much what you'd have to expect. So this is not the picture of comparative religion that is shared by the experts in that field. So that's why we wanted to link for you some of the stuff we said already on this, starting with the Hislop, the book that is the source of this idea for most witnesses and other cultists. Hislop, the Two Babylons. We'll put a link into that. What did he actually say about the Trinity? And second, John 17.
Yeah.
The
14 to 17 we've got videos on. Right?
Yeah, we did 3 videos that were called Ask JWs. And the first one was about this name. Which name does Jesus of Nazareth use with his apostles, and which name did he use in public for God?
And a playlist, right?
And a playlist about the hell and the afterlife issue, which has got, I think, quite a few videos on it already. So sample it, because again, I think you'll see right away that the church has left a lot of room for wiggling when it comes to the doctrine of the afterlife, because the Old Testament certainly does, and even parts of the New Testament give room for interpretation.
And yeah, I think as witnesses we have just one picture of what Christians believe about hell.
And it's not a major doctrine in Christianity like we think it is. And it's not in the creeds.
Yeah, and they don't all see it the same way. So, yeah, you need to know that.
Yeah. What
the positions are, because otherwise you're just arguing with the air.
That's right.
For some
it's
people.
A straw man, really, when it comes to basic Christianity. So next time, Plato and Christianity.